Thank you, Jay. Today's keynote speaker, Chris Theodore, is president of Theodore and Associates and a highly respected automotive executive, engineer, educator, and consultant with more than 5 decades of leadership experience in the automotive industry. Chris holds an executive MBA from Michigan State University and both Bachelor of Science and Master of Science degrees in mechanical engineering from the University of Michigan. Throughout his career, he has held senior leadership positions at some of the automotive industry's most influential companies, including Ford Motor, Chrysler, American Motors, Saleen, ASC, Cars and Concepts, Legend Industries, and Detroit Diesel. As Vice President of Platform Engineering at Chrysler and later Vice President at Ford Motor, he played a key role in the development of numerous landmark vehicle programs, including the Jeep 4-liter engine, Ram 8-liter V10, the 1995 Chrysler minivans, the 2000 Neon and PT Cruiser, and the award-winning 2005 Mustang and Ford GT. In addition to his corporate leadership, Chris served as an adjunct professor at the University of Detroit Mercy and has been a guest judge for Motor Trend's Car of the Year program for 15 years. Today, he continues to advise organizations across the automotive and transportation sectors, serving on technology boards and providing strategic consulting through Theodore and Associates. His unique blend of engineering expertise, executive leadership, and industry insight makes him a sought-after speaker on automotive innovation, product development, leadership, and the future of the automotive industry. Certainly, the pinnacle being today as he addresses the NCRO. Chris has 5 kids, 6 grandkids, and 3 great-grandkids, and is enjoying, I guess, semi-retirement with his wife, Tracy, in Port Sanilac, Michigan. Please welcome today's keynote speaker and NCRO member in good standing, Chris Theodore.
Drink up here, put it down here. I hope you can hear me. Where's the clicker? Are you going to click for me? All right, got it. Okay. Big white, the white button is forward. Okay. Well, 60th breakfast meeting. Last time I was here was about 6 years ago, I think, and a lot's changed since then, and changing fast, and it's changing faster than ever, and that's not just a euphemism. This world's gone crazy. I still, I love 3 things. You guys know me. Next to my family, number 1 is cars, number 2 is designing cars, and number 3 is I love the business, and I stick with it. And I spend 2-3 hours in the morning just trying to figure out what the hell is going on, because it's changing, and it's changing fast. And judging cars for Motor Trend, the cars do get better every year. But in 15 years, I see the same mistakes being made over and over again that we all learned from our masters and from our mentors and from all the experts in the business. And of course, COVID really messed things up. And then we said, it's okay. You guys stay home. You don't need any mentoring. You don't need to be told what to do. Just do it. And we call them COVID cars. You can tell when we test them that a lot of things were missed, and it's showing up, as you all know, in warranty costs and all sorts of consumer problems. So about 2 years ago, I said, wait a second, let me write a book about everything everyone taught me. That includes the bosses, and that includes a lot of people in this room, because I've had a lot of experience, probably a breadth of experience, worked for many different auto companies, been a supplier, so I see all different sides of it. I've been in most of the facilities around the world. I'm not the expert in anything, but all these experts taught me a lot of lessons. And why don't I share them and create a living document that hopefully somebody will pick up and add to, and so I'll explain in a second what's going on. So I started writing this. There's 10 chapters. I know one of the ones you're most interested in is the warranty one. I haven't started that chapter yet, but I will talk about warranty, because I hear you harassed Mark Trassel the last time he was here about warranty. And that design guy doesn't really think about that too much. And so I started to write these chapters about what I'd learned. And I shared a few of them. By the way, the first 3 chapters were all reviewed by Bob Lutz, and he's got public relations and marketing chapters right now. And then I showed a few to John McElroy, and you guys may remember John from when he was here, and John liked them, and he said, you know, nobody's done this to say, how do you connect the whole industry? Everybody knows their silo, everybody knows their piece of the puzzle, but the interrelationship's not really well understood, and they don't know what a best practice is and what isn't. And I've been in different facilities, different organizations, so I started writing. Well, John says, let's do podcasts. And so we've been working on podcasts of each chapter. We've got 30 hours. I'm going to show them all to you in the next. No, I won't. We've got 30 hours on tape right now being edited, and probably release them in August. The idea is we're going to send them out a chapter at a time. You all get to look at them, watch them, comment on them, critique them, tell me, Chris, you're full of it, or you forgot to talk about this. I'm going to rewrite a chapter based on everybody's input, and then we'll release an each chapter at a time. And maybe someday in the future, we'll compile it all and put together a book, and maybe somebody else can pick up the torch after I'm long gone. But I just wanted to share everything. It was a way for me to get everything out of my head, because I just can't stop thinking about this stuff. So, chapters targeting the customer and breakthrough products, which we can talk about. You're going to pick, so I'm going to tell you about these a little bit, and at the end you can come back and ask questions, and I can elaborate, because I had over 200 slides, and I don't think you wanted to see those either. You had a pretty good discussion, I'm sure, with Mark Trossel on design, but if we want to talk about some more, I've got some things and some opinions about it, particularly the fashion cycle and breakthrough products. Corporate management you're probably interested in, and I discuss that in several ways. The first thing, management styles, corporate organizations, I've seen them all. I think some are better than others. Management techniques, some are better than others. I picked 4 CEOs that I knew and worked for or with as model executives. I've known a lot of less than model executive CEOs in the business. It's a positive thing. I'm talking about best practices. I'm not going to talk about war stories. But the 4 I picked were Lee Iacocca, Alan Mullally, Roger Penske, and Bob Lutz. The 3 others I mentioned were Ferdinand Piëch of Volkswagen, who was a technocrat and a dictator, but took VW to #1 and it collapsed right afterwards. And of course, you can't talk about the automobile without Elon Musk and Apple and Steve Jobs, because they had a huge influence on the business. Engineering, that's my specialty. And we talk about time to market, which is becoming a big thing. We had compressed the time to market. We talk about different organizations. I have a preference, having seen them all. I think platform teams were really the way, and still are the way to go. And if you look at the Chinese, you'll see that's what they're doing. And even we had an effect on Toyota. And we'll talk about that. Also, the technology. It's changing fast. We've got autonomous vehicles, but we haven't taken advantage of some things we started at Chrysler. The entire industry, with sharing data instantaneously across all the functions. You probably don't want to get into that. Purchasing, I'm going to touch on that a little bit because, well, you'll see in a second. Things have turned for the worse, and it's time to turn that ship around. Public relations. We had the best public relations team in the business. It kind of fell quiet, and it seems to be on the upswing just recently. Good crisis will always do that. Marketing, most marketing's bad, and I talk about it, but I really talk about the good examples. And there are some good examples here, and there is some upstick there. Sales and service, the dealer relationship and the manufacturer's relationship is critical. And if you don't understand it, they're legal partners, but they're set up to be kind of friction between them. And we talk about that, and I talk about kind of the best of both. So interestingly enough, I mentioned 4 dealer owners that I know, and Bill's not here, but send the word back hello to Bill. I understand, and you'll see why I understand, because sometimes we blame dealers when we should be looking at ourselves. And the same thing, I'm going to scare the hell out of you guys in a little bit about what's going to be coming in about another 10, 15 years. But there's an answer, so stay tuned. We'll get to that. And quality we'll touch on at the end, because I know we've got some serious problems there. So to make it shorter, just a kind of my scorecard right now. And I'm being, Chrysler used to be the champion of breakthrough products. I mean, we did the minivan, we did the Viper, we did the PT Cruiser, we did LH cars were revolutionary, the Chrysler 300. And who was the idiot that canceled the Chrysler 300? I got to tell you, that's the stupidest financial decision of all time. And I'll fill you in later, because I know you were pressed for time. Design, Ralph Shields leads one of the best design crews in the country. I've worked with Mark Drossel, and I worked with his father. I give him an A, like on the Charger, I think is a gorgeous car. I give them a B right now. I probably was at a C at time. It kind of Jeep lost its way for a while, and they're working their way back. I still have some opinions on that. If we have time, we can talk about them. But you got a good design team. Corporate management, I'm going to give it a B. That's kind of, I'm working that it gets to a B with the new boss. It was a disaster under Tavares. Now I got to tell you, don't listen to me, because sometimes I'm dead wrong. When it was here 6 years ago, there was rumors that Fiat was going to merge with somebody, and I said, well, if we had to talk about it, probably better Peugeot than Renault. And well, we got Tavares. Well, I didn't know we were going to get Tavares, and he was obviously not the guy. The only reason I said Peugeot was because a guy by the name of Pallotta from Nissan had really revitalized the Infiniti brand, but it turned out he's a bit of a jerk too. So we would have lost. We would have lost. Don't listen to me, but I'm giving you what I've learned from everybody. Engineering, not what it used to be, but there's reasons for it, and I think it's going to get better. Manufacturing, we were on our way. Chapter 5, by the way, I reviewed it with Denny Pauly. You all remember Denny. And Denny liked it. And then he said, we got to talk about culture first, because that's the biggest thing. And we can come back to that. They're getting better, but long way to go. Purchasing is a disaster. I'll show you the numbers, and then I'll tell you why I think that is so. Public relations used to be the greatest, kind of silent. Seems to be coming back now. A good crisis seems to do that. You have a new PR person. All of a sudden, I'm seeing some positive things happening now because of the new STLA plan. We're going to talk about that in a second. Marketing, whoever the genius was that took the JEEP off the Grand Wagoneer, I hope has found a new job. I mean, some disastrous decisions that have to be corrected, and I think they are being corrected. And Olivier Francois is a really bright guy, but I think we got some less than optimal people in the product planning department. And sales and service, and this is not so much on the dealer side, and I'll show you some data. It is more on the company made itself antagonistic with the dealers. And Bill Golling, who I know closely, I mean, has been one of Chrysler's biggest supporters. And hopefully things continue to improve. And we'll talk about quality. Okay, so why are we in this mess? I don't want to spend time looking back, but okay, one slide. You've had 4 owners in 26 years. Daimler stole $7 billion and said, oh, it went to research. We never saw a penny out. Oh, can you hear me? I can't walk. I can't use my hands. I can't walk around. Cerberus, incompetent leadership. Fiat, Marchione saved it, but then he took some of the money and spent it on Alfa, on Maserati, on Lancia, and of course, then the after the Great Recession, there was things happening. Then we got Tavares, and that was simply just keep cutting costs, keep raising prices till nobody bought any cars, and Chrysler didn't make any money. And a sleepy board of directors woke up and got rid of them. And so hopefully things are going to be better. Now you look at the loss of talent, and that's not that we're arrogant or anything, but we knew a few things when we were running the company. Ton of retirements. We're all here. And you're here because you're kind of worried too, or at least interested. Why the hell this stuff's happening? Outsourcing. Somebody thought it was a good idea to outsource engineering, or at least a portion of it, to India. Staff reductions. I can't tell you. I ran into a lady last year. She worked down in the metal shop at CTC, retired 5 years ago. I haven't been in CTC probably in 8-10 years, and it was a ghost town then. And she was damn near in tears telling me the story. An executive came down with a suit and tie and says, "Can you make me some 3x5 steel plates?" And she said, "Sure, just give me a rec." He said, "I don't know how to write a rec. I don't know where to get a rec because all the layers of management in between weren't there." And she told me the stories about how the waste baskets were piled in one office and the printers were piled in another office. And it was just terrible. We'll show you how they destroyed supplier trust and relationships. All 4 of them did that. A little bit of positive news when Fiat had it. Alienated the dealers, and that's got to stop. Emphasis on cost over quality and function. That's not where you take the cost out. You take the waste out. Teamwork, got to rebuild it. We had one of the greatest teams. Look, from 1989 to 1995, I call the Camelot years. Best time of my life. And love to see that come back at Chrysler. And to hear that they closed the pilot facility, I just realized that yesterday. I mean, I can't even imagine the stupidity of that. At least they opened it back up, and now they're going to improve quality. But I can tell you a story about that later, because the pilot facility was one of the key tools that we had. Okay, enough of the old. So what about the near-term future? Actually, I do think it's promising. Chrysler now, instead of being raped and pillaged, you got to use the words, instead of getting money to invest in Ram and Jeep. So that's happening. Now, what they're going to do with the Chrysler brand, we'll talk about in a second, but promising. The management's obviously more enlightened, turning the team loose and having them work on product and marketing and public relations. They are hiring people, which is good. They are opening CTC back up from I don't know if it'll ever get back. It was one of the finest technical facilities in the world, and I've been in most of them, including I just was in Ford's new facility, and we had it beat. And by the way, I was against it when Lee wanted to open it up because I wanted the money to go to product, but that turned out to be one of the best things we ever did when we organized the platforms in CTC. Quality's got to happen now, and we can talk about that a little bit. Now, here's also all the risks that we have to look forward to. In Europe, the auto industry, all the auto companies are in deep trouble, including Stellantis. The overcapacity in Europe is 50%. In other words, half their plants, they're running half speed, half time, half whatever. The Chinese are dumping their production into Europe. Question is, will Stellantis survive? I mean, they're being good right now. They're spending the money on Chrysler because they recognize that's where the profits come from. But if things get bad, are they going to be like Mercedes or Fiat and say, oh, we got to feed our people back home? It's political. That's a risk. What happens is if there's a U.S. recession, we know what that's like. Will the Trump market shrink? And there's some indications that it's starting to soften. Can Chrysler and Stellantis keep pace with technology, which there are a couple of weak spots that I can talk about? And what are the implications of artificial intelligence? So those are things that you can think about that we can talk about. How many have seen this slide from the latest show? So most of you should be up to date. So new products are coming. That's good news. Let me comment on them. We'll start with Ram, the lower right corner. Ram's got 20% of the market. Pretty fantastic. And Ram was one of the breakthrough products. If you remember, we had 8% of the product. We made it look like, a Mack truck and went to 18%. Now have 20% and we're closing in on GM and Ford. The Dakota midsize pickup was Sperlich's invention. Not really a good idea at the time. I've been critical of it, but its time has come. So I think why wasn't it a good idea? Because all it did was cannibalize sales from the larger pickup trucks and never really made a dent in profitability. Now with these ginormous vehicles that we're building at huge prices, the midsize market is going to become a reality. The Rampage could be good. I have not seen it or driven it. I think it's built in South America. I've been fighting for it Ford since 2003 to do a compact pickup, which is going to be a huge, huge market. And the Mavericks just stolen it. Took them 10 years to figure it out, but they did it. And we'll see how the Rampage competes. At least it's not new investment money. It's just bringing it to the market, but hopefully has to be as good as at least as good as its competitors. And the Ram Charger, I don't know. I'm kind of confused. It sounds like another version of a Durango. So it's okay. There's a market for it. No question there. You move over to Dodge. I think a GLH goes like hell. I don't expect it to be an Omni GLH. I expect it to be a CUV, with big wheels on steroids, and that'll be fine. And there's talk of a Copperhead to replace Viper. Hopefully it's smaller and lighter and V8 powered, and they don't spend a lot of money. One thing they should learn from Viper is you don't spend $150 million. This is just to get public awareness and people talking. Jeep is finding itself. I like the Recon. I guess I will say it. The Cherokee, you can still tell it's a front-wheel drive based SUV. Sits a little bit low. And I hear they got some launch issues with transmissions as well. We'll talk about that. The Recon looks good. I think Jeep has to get back a little bit to, even on the upscale cars, and I've got a slide for it later, but a little tougher appearance before. So everybody else, it's not all Jeep's fault. Everybody else copied Jeep. So how do you distinguish yourself? Well, when you start to soften, better design, actually, they're better looking cars, but they lost some of their Jeepness. I think you've got to get that back. And the big challenge is on the upper left, the airflow. If we're going to revive the Chrysler brand, it's critical. Like I said, dropping the 300, it was stupid. I mean, you've got 3 cars in a plant. I got to say it. 3 cars in a plant. And you say, well, we're not selling a whole lot of Chrysler 300s. And so we're going to drop it. So now your plant's running at 2/3 capacity and it absorbs the burden. And they say, well, those cars aren't making as much money as somebody flunked MBA school. I don't know. The airflow is critical and it needs to be a breakthrough, and breakthrough isn't always about going forward. So this is going to be a real test. And I'll show you a couple pictures. I'm a little more worried about the Aero and the Aero Cross. They look fine, but they haven't told us where they're going to build them, and I suspect they're going to try and import them because they're basically restyled Fiats. And they're good looking, but the good thing is Chrysler's first out with this new, they call it Stella platform. I think the vehicle they're talking about is the one second from the right. They're going to have to, I think they're coming up with some kind of two-row SUV-ish electrified but multi-powertrain vehicle. They've got to target the customer. They got to understand specifically who that customer is, and it's got to be unique and like nothing else anybody else has. That should be serious focus. What I've seen in the past, it was like, okay, let's copy Tesla, let's copy Lucid. No, this has to be unique, and you have to know exactly who you're going to go after and really make a statement in a while. I mentioned the Aero and the Aero Cross. They're fine-looking vehicles. The Aero Cross, if you imagine that back end to the right of the photo on the back of the car that's in the center, that's the Aero Cross. The Aero. The Aero Cross is the SUV you see in the picture. Good-looking vehicle. But again, if they try and bring it over from Europe with the tariffs, that's not going to be a sales success. I talk about a marketing strategy that's really different than what 90% of the industry does. What time is it? Are we running out of time? Okay. A guy by the name of Peter Schutz saved Porsche. And he saved Porsche, but they were going to drop the 911. You don't need to know that, but one of his marketing ideas that has been used successfully, but very rarely because finance guys don't like it, sales guys don't like it, is introduce the car at a low price. Get everybody to start word of mouth, say what a deal it is, and then ratchet the price up. And everybody says, oh, you can't do that. Well, Toyota did it. Honda did it. Kia did it. Now Ford Motor Company did it with the Maverick. I think it was an accident, but they introduced the Maverick pickup truck at $19,995. Okay? They sold out their capacity. Guess how much the introductory price is on a Maverick today? $28,000 plus. That's the way, if you want to get attention, so I'm pointing at the, if you want to get attention, introduce it at a low price, ratchet it up once word of mouth says, this is a great car, and go get it. My opinion. Okay. So now the long term's not so rosy. I think there's good, this is buying us time, buying us ex-Chrysler time, 5-10 years. Okay? The global overcapacity is insane. China will eventually get in the U.S. market. If you don't realize it now, Volvos, which are owned by Geely, the Chinese company, are built here in the United States. Probably about half of you think EVs are stupid, and that's okay. But EVs are going to win in the end. And because it's a low-cost solution. We talk about affordability. As soon as battery prices continue to scale down. Now, the Americans are losing money. Why? Because they haven't got any volume. Well, I'll get into it. So the question is, can Chrysler and Stellantis compete in the EV market? I'm going to show you a scenario I don't think you've thought about. Autonomous vehicles, this is where we're going to scare the hell out of the dealers. What if they become ubiquitous? Robotaxis take 50% of the market in 2050. It's going to be a different world. Now, the good news, there is an answer for dealers there. But the market for new car sales will shrink to 8 million in the U.S. from 15 to 16 million. And I'll explain that in a second. Who of the Detroit three would survive? And I guess if you ask the odds makers right now, Chrysler would probably be in third place. on that survival list. There is a solution. The big three could work together. Will they? I'm championing it, but I doubt it. So let's talk about those. Tell me to stop when I bored you. Maybe I have already. Okay. Global growth is flat as far as vehicles. It might go up 1 million. It's basically 93, 94. This is the whole globe, million cars. Guess what? The capacity of plants in existence is 165 million cars and trucks. Means 73 million units of capacity. So what does a manufacturer do? Starts dumping because their plants are only being, on average, 55% utilized. So what's China doing? Varies by region. We're the lucky ones here in what is a bad scenario. Their surplus capacity is 30%. Almost all their manufacturers are losing money. They are weaponizing the market by exporting everything they can. Europe, we talked about it. They're underwater with less than 50% capacity, and they are living by EU rules that require CO2 reduction. I'm going to show you the definition of insanity on the next slide, but we'll hang on. Japan and Korea, actually, they're growing a little bit. Their markets are stable. They're doing okay. They're going to continue to nibble away in the U.S. And by the way, we make nothing that's exportable, because we like big cars, big trucks. Nobody wants them. So we are an island unto ourselves. So they'll make modest inroads. Not worried about them so much. They are worried to death about China. And they'll probably respond a whole lot quicker than we do. Now, here we've shrunk down. Actually, what used to be the big three is now the Detroit three is now 35% smaller than it was pre-recession. It's not the big three anymore. It's not a global company. They're not global companies anymore. They are regional manufacturers. Now, they are profitable. Why? Because so long as the dogs like the dog food and want bigger and better trucks and SUVs, they're loading them all up and they're not making EVs. So that's working in the near term, but you got to get ready for the long term. So autonomous vehicles. So this is the scary part. Let's assume, and I mean, they've been totally overhyped. They're going to come later than sooner. You're going to see, every time there is going to be an autonomous vehicle crash, there's going to be an incompetent NHTSA investigation, and then the lawyers are going to get involved, and there'll be all sorts of issues that they haven't even thought about yet. Okay, but it's coming, and it's a good thing because it's going to save lives when it does come. But let's say it comes by 2050, that 50% of the cars are robo-taxis. Well, those robo-taxis are going to run 20 hours a day. And they're going to get serviced every day. So they're going to take up a huge amount of the mileage that consumers require, which means the volume of retail cars sold goes down. So if they take 50% of the market, now we're a 16 million car industry. Well, it's going to be like a 9 million car industry, half of which are robo-taxis, which are going to be low-cost vehicles. And the other half will be the retail market. So that market's going to shrink, and it's going to continue to shrink with time. Pick the date, pick the number. So the trend is real. It's going to happen. So those cars are going to be accumulating 4 or 5 times the miles of a typical car. And so here's the answer for the dealers. So what's really going to happen is dealers are going to have to shrink down and become more like custom dealers in a smaller market space. Dealers that have large pieces of property and multi-brands may consolidate into some dealerships. Then they take the rest of the dealership. If you think about this, If you have 5 million robo-taxis on the road that have to be serviced and charged every day, divide that by 17,000 US dealers. That means each dealer, because they're the only ones going to have the capacity to do this, will be the ones that are servicing and recharging and fixing these vehicles. That works out to 300 cars a day. So it's going to be a totally new business model. Still some retail. And who else can do it? Maybe a few rental car companies, maybe the Manheims of the world. But the Manheims, if you don't know a Manheim collects up all the off-sale cars, reconditions them on a production line, and auctions them off to private dealers and private individuals. They'll be the ones dismantling the cars and recycling them. So that's the future that's coming. And that's the future. I don't know why the big three don't talk about it. Even Tesla doesn't talk about it, because they don't want to scare people away of what's really going to happen. Now, I talk about insanity. And this is Stellantis. This is government management insanity. The Leap Motor TO3E electric vehicle shown here. It's being produced by Stellantis for Chinese partner Leap Motor, who has now made their first profit of a whopping $36 million, which just shows you how underwater all these Chinese companies are. It's the third best-selling car in Italy. The sticker price is 18,000 euro, but no, you can buy it for 4,900 euro, $5,300 for an electric vehicle. You can't buy a Chinese golf cart for $5,300. I mean, think about this. The government gives them consumer 11,000 euros, and Stellantis says, oh, not still enough, let's throw another 2,100 in. Now, a rational government, even if it was going to meet all the CO2 standards, why wouldn't they give 13,100 or 15,000 euros to Stellantis to build Stellantis cars instead of feeding the Chinese pocket? I don't understand. And this is where Europe going, and they're just waking up to it. It's absolute nonsense. Your governments at work. Talk about the Chinese. This is just some of it. The cost advantage, rough numbers, don't take them as sacred. In fact, I think the Chinese numbers are overstated cost-wise. But they have, here's the thing, the Detroit 3, just talk material cost, pay more than the transplants do. And the transplants pay roughly 1,000 more than the Chinese do locally. Labor costs are $2,000 over the Chinese. And those are probably, like I said, understated. Capital and overhead, that's probably where the Chinese hide most of the money, because not only the Chinese government, but the regional governments are funding the Chinese. So at a minimum, $7,000 cost advantage. That's what we're up against in my mind. This is real. And oh, by the way, remember at Chrysler, speed to market? Remember how we got down from 36 months to 24 months? We were on our way to 21 months production, and the Chinese are at 18. And we would have been there if we kept going. And we let it all go to hell. Suppliers. Hard to believe. I can't point to the chart, but if you look at the orange line in the Camelot years, when we had SCORE, when we had supplier partnerships, Chrysler was right there with Honda and Toyota. 2000, who comes along? Mercedes. The day they take over, they send a note to every supplier. We're sending you a check for 10% less than the invoice. If you don't accept that check, we consider your business lost. And then after that, they imposed another 30% cost reduction. What happened? That orange line dropped like a stone. And in 2008, when Marchione came in, they started to switch things around by adopting some of the purchasing procedures we had. Now, this is supplier trust, and the scale changes on the next slide. But if you look at that slide, the turquoise, the bottom, the very valley in 2005, that's Chrysler. And it started to work its way back up through 2014. But still, at the bottom of the pack, because everybody else was working their way up. And oh, by the way, the Great Recession did hurt Toyota and Honda because their sales went down. Look where we are now. Stellantis 2022, that's the black line, damn near hit the bottom of the scale. Toyota, Honda, and General Motors has been on an improvement. And I got to tell you, having dealt with both, with Fiat as a supplier and with Ford as a supplier, they deserve the crappy ratings they're getting. The old school, no partnership, do as I say, cut your price, and then I'll beat you up if the quality's still good. So this has to be fixed, and it has to be fixed now. And I gave it a D because it probably was an E. But I think the lady they just hired a year ago is already gone that was supposed to fix it, and they've got somebody else in there now. I hope they learn from this. Maybe they'll read the chapter someday. I don't know. Why is China doing so well? Well, they built an entire ecosystem. You take, first of all, great thing about capitalism. We went to China. All the manufacturers went to China. The first one was Jeep, by the way, and Volkswagen. And China was smart. They said, hey, we got a 51-49 partnership here. So we went there and we made money selling cars to the Chinese, and they learned how to build cars. And then they hired a smart kid from MIT, and they said, put together a plan for the Chinese auto industry. And voila, now you've got this whole ecosystem where whereas we control American manufacturers, even Toyota, 50% of the product is produced in-house. They're at 90%. They got the whole food chain from raw materials, to cars off the line. They established, and this is one of the answers for the auto companies, KTARC, which was a government agency that started out by coming up with automotive standards. But what they ultimately ended up doing is designing common parts that are used by all the Chinese manufacturers. So you look at a washer bottle in any brand Chinese car, it's the same damn washer bottle. In fact, they've set a standard for platform architectures, and some of the manufacturers deviate from. But imagine the economies of scale. I just told you how we reduced our volumes by 35%, and I can't even remember the numbers of the cars they're producing. Now, their economies of scale on this are just unbelievable. Not to mention, they manufacture the food chain for their batteries. They've got all the raw materials for their batteries, and they recycle their batteries. They keep track of their batteries. It's a whole ecosystem that feeds on itself with circular sourcing. I won't go through all of that, but they have basically a preferred supplier list that's, has the lowest cost, best solutions on the market. So one of the answers is for the Detroit Three to work together. And one of my heroes, my two biggest mentors are Bob Lutz and Francois Castain. Francois tried. We tried US ABC. We tried US Car. I sat down with the Ford guys and the GM guys, and they go, not telling you anything. You guys don't know nothing. Hubris is going to be the problem of all three manufacturers and the inability to work together. Because that's the U.S. government cannot do it. Last thing you want is the government doing what the Chinese government, but we could get the government to support a consortium, non-anti-competitive, have common components, and then take the national laboratories who have, now, Chinese are passing the national laboratories too, sad to say, and our universities. We train those too. But we have the technology to develop our own battery technology, make it unique. Have the national labs make it unique. And when you get to phase 3, the Chinese now can charge batteries in 15 minutes, full charge, 800 volts. And they've got battery swapping. You can go into a Neo station drive in, and 5 minutes later drive out with a robotically taken out battery pack and a new one installed. And they've got 15,000 of these in China already. I think more like 20,000. What if we had our own chemistry battery pack, our own chemistry size, and we only had it for the big three? And now you didn't have to take your EV to a charging station. You went into the gas station, and it's just like walking into a car wash. You roll onto the rolls, and it puts in a new battery while the other one's charging on a low energy grid, not a high energy grid. This could be done. And then if that worked, then Toyota and Honda that are building here, they'd have to say, wait a second, we want to be part of it too. And we could say to the Chinese, we'll see. Just a thought. Okay, dealer trust. Stellantis, zero trust, 64% of the dealers. No, that's not galling. That's not the guys here, but they've been treated poorly. And it shows. Who's number one? Toyota. Yeah, nothing more to say there. I mean, that's damning. Why would you have a Stellantis franchise if you could have the other one? And poor Bill, I'm sorry, poor Bill, he suffered with the damn Fiats. You suffer with the Fiats, Mike. And after the Fiats, you got the what? Pardon me? and Alpha's not much better, right? A little bit. Okay. Why don't they trust? Well, a lot of good reasons. Here's one. This is just a pet thing of mine. It's been on my mind for a long time. Actually, I first proposed this to Iacocca when he first came to the company. He had a suggestion plan. I said, hey, why don't we set up some warranty centers? With about 100 other ideas I had. And of course, that was rejected. I can't remember the name of the program we're asking you. I don't know. The winning, it was come up with cost suggestions. And the winning suggestion was the guy who took the silver paint off the starter motor, because the silver paint was on the starter motor so that the starter motor didn't overheat. And they took the chrome off the door lock buttons. That was the other winning. I digress. Chrysler invented the long-term warranty. Remember the 770? Yeah. And then it went away. But during the 77, who made the most reliable, durable engines and transmissions in the universe? Chrysler. And Lee brought it back with the 550. Remember that? And the 550s really helped us sell a lot of K cars. And that went away. What always bothered me is all the warranties now. And then, Hyundai made a name for itself because everybody thought they were trash cars. They came out with their 10-year warranty. And people said, hey, I'll take a risk on that. And I've done some research on this, and this is a tough one, but there's literally billions of hanging in the balance here. So I gotta promote it. Maybe you guys can too. Nobody warrants. Nobody's tried warranting. Your warranty runs out when you resell the car. Simple as that. And there's a whole market. You see it on TV. You see Ice Cube selling you your extended warranty, and the dealers sell their and they are hugely expensive. They really do not pay back. And it's because they could not compete with the U.S. manufacturers if we offered a second warranty. Now, why don't we do that? I mean, I'm not the only guy that must have thought about this. And the real reason, and there's benefits. So look at the benefits. For the secondary owner, they get a factory owner, not a fly-by-night owner, not a fly-by-night mechanic. They have a clean transaction. When they get the new title, they got 30 days to get the new warranty, or it's it. Maybe I only give them 7 days. I don't care. And we ran the numbers probably at half the cost of what these insurance companies, and they're making billions. They're billion-dollar companies now on these warranties at half the cost. The manufacturers capture customer satisfaction, retention. Nobody makes a claim. You make pure profit. Higher residuals at trade-in. And for the first time, I'm going to show you, You get direct feedback on your extended mileage warranty. Now that'll come electronically in the future. Tesla's got it. Rivian's got it. We haven't got anything. Okay? And the dealers, authorized business work. They still get the labor and parts business, and they get repeat customers coming back. Sorry about PowerPoint, messed up the slide. Okay, why doesn't this happen? There's a lot of reasons, but I think they can be overcome. Get into the chapters when you see the videos, but basically it's the conflict between warranty costs and dealer service costs, because auto companies want to save on warranty costs, so they shave the labor rates down to what is not real. You know that, I know that. And they don't give them the margin that they get on the sale of resale parts. So the dealers say, hey, you know, you're breaking the franchise agreement, and there's always been an ongoing debate. For a manufacturer to do this, you have to become, the minute title gets transferred, you have to become an insurance company. They'd have to have 50 insurance companies underwrite it. I think working with a dealer body, this could be the dealer councils, there could be an experiment to show a win-win, where if the manufacturers worked with the dealers to come up with some common solution on labor rates and pricing, both would end up making a lot more money that other guys are making. I mean, even I'm talking to dealers too, but even if you think about with Ice Cube, they don't bring it to a dealership when if they do warrant a repair, it goes to Joe's hobby shop. What time is it? I didn't bring my watch. 5 to 12? I ran long. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Customer Service Satisfaction Index. Lower right-hand corner, RAM. I dug into it. Why? Because that's not a dealer problem. How many Rams went into the dealerships for warranty repair in the last 2 years? Anybody know? 1.8 million. If you're a dealer, how are you going to handle that? And if you're a customer, how happy are you going to be? And one of those was a turn signal that wouldn't return to zero or neutral position. How do you mess that up? I mean, they were only invented, what, 50 years ago? J.D. Power initial quality. Well, the good news, Dodge and Jeep are above average. This is 2025. Chrysler, and you see what happened to Ram. That's all that warranty. Vehicle dependability. Dodge and Jeep, this is 3 years now in service. Bottom, Chrysler and Ram. I messed up the title on this slide, so I'm not sure it is, but guess what? There's no Chrysler. There's just Ram and Jeep there, and it's below average, whatever it was. Consumer Reports predicted reliability. 14th, 15th, and 17th place. Here's one I didn't know about, and I bet you the manufacturers don't even track this. There is a long-term reliability index where they go into the Manheim auction houses, they tear down high-mileage cars, an independent group, and they tell you what they find with high mileage, because the manufacturers have no high-mileage data. They really don't. How stupid is that? You know what they're finding out? Everybody right now, GM's recalling thousands of V8 engines. Toyota's recalling thousands of engines. Stellantis is recalling. The good news is, we always knew this, powertrain group's pretty strong at Chrysler. For Chrysler brand, the 300, the Town and Country Pacifica, good. The bad, the other legacy platforms, not so good. Dodge, we know the Hemi's reliable. Jeeps, the 4-liter from AMC and the Pentastar V6, solid. Bad, Compass, Patriot, not so much the 4 cylinders, more so the CVT transmissions and all the transmission problems. Rams, again, above average with Hemi and the Cummins diesel, and because we know how to do rear-wheel drive transmissions and spotty, you know, I went through ultra drive. So Just imagine if we had the data, though. JD Power Appeal. Bob Lutz invented this survey to say, hey, we make attractive cars. It's not just things gone wrong, it's things gone right. There's the Chrysler product, Stellantis product on that list. Okay. I think I used your time up. I'm sorry, but if you have questions, I'd be happy to answer them. And I lost my voice. You good? Okay, thank you for
Hey, Chris. Yeah. So I remember us working together on the CDS process a long time ago. And actually, I left Chrysler shortly after you left Chrysler. But the interesting thing is you're right on. I went to Tier 1 supplier, actually Better Place brought in the battery pack changes. That was in 2009. I actually worked with them. I brought the SAE and I told the big three about them. They were ready to kill me. Okay. But China followed it. And what I'm seeing is we're losing our ass against China right now, guys. Right.
Use the microphone.
Yeah. Oh,
I wanted a lavalier next time.
yeah.
China, the batteries that China has, not only, they're all the same size, they're all the same bricks, even though they're manufactured with different chemistries. So they're all interchangeable.
Yep.
Okay. And that was the big drawback with initial EVs. But now that everybody's gone to the roller skate concept, it's a very viable solution. Okay.
So is anybody listening to you, the big three? Because I went to supplier, Continental. They just got rid of me after I went to Movia, but they took all of the technical experts and got rid of them first. Okay, like you said,
I don't think
they went to Ford, they went to GM, and it's interesting. You're right on about Ford because the one went there. It's the Ford's way of doing business. GM seems to be very agile right now and trying to figure out how to compete in this market.
Yeah, I think GM's a little bit more progressive.
Yep.
But the three of them should get together.
Agreed.
It won't even work for GM. Like, you got to understand, the volume's not there.
Right.
They are paying licenses to the Chinese to use the technology for their batteries.
Yep.
For starters. And then they don't have the volume, so the plants are sitting empty, and now they say, oh, I'm going to charge the network. They have to get together. I don't know if they're going to listen. Hopefully, you tell, if you guys like the podcast we do, spread the word. Maybe somebody will listen. All I can do is,
Great presentation.
tell you guys, thanks.
Chris, over here to your left.
Yeah, is the Pacifica hybrid dead, or do you see it coming back? Plug-in hybrid.
Hybrids, pardon me, plug-in? Plug-ins, that's a good question. I love plug-in hybrids. Of course, I wanted to buy the Pacifica plug-in hybrid, but I'm glad I didn't, because it was unfortunately a quality disaster. It was the best value on the market. Americans not good at understanding the plug-in hybrids, and it's probably the worst of all worlds from a cost standpoint. So I think we're going to see lots of hybrids, regular hybrids. We're going to see e-revs for trucks. I didn't mention that. And I'm working on a hydrogen engine with an inventor. And I think in the end, it's going to be mostly EVs, pure battery. So we'll see if the plug-in comes back, but it makes a ton of sense. Don't get me wrong, but I think the cost is, because you're paying for both bigger batteries and a motor.
Chris, we have a question here.
Hello, Chris. This is Stefan Kupa. We worked on a minivan in 1996, many years ago.
Yep.
Great comments you made about the platform. My question is, we've all heard about AI. How do you see AI in engineering and manufacturing, what the impacts are there?
Well, actually, okay. I know if you want to leave, guys, if I'm boring you, but I'll be here to answer your question. But look, AI is a big topic. Pandora's out of the box. I've done all the reading about it. Even Henry Kissinger wrote a book about it. I read that. There's some terrible things that can happen with AI. It can also do some wonderful stuff, and I'm doing some of that stuff. And in the chapters that I've got, each chapter I show how and where AI can be used. And I've had some surprises with AI. I talked about this engine, and calculations that would have taken me weeks. I wish Tom Asmus were here. I mean, I put the numbers in, and the software came out. It told me exactly the equations that it used. I could check the numbers. It showed me the code, and it made the projection. Did it all in 5 minutes. The other surprising thing is I found out it's a great tool for creating your own ideas. If I had an stupid idea in my mind for an artificial muscle 45 years ago, I don't know anything about muscles, but I had this idea in my head. After it did this work on the engine for me, I said, and I talked to it, and I said, okay, let's start out with this idea I had. And we built it up, and it turns out, yes, the idea works, and told me how to do it. And it says, do you want me to write a microchip for you? And I said, no, thanks. And I mean, it's pretty amazing. And I'm going to work on it this summer. Now, in the meantime, I think, and it also referenced, somebody's worked on something similar to this back in so-and-so. So maybe it's patentable, maybe not. But imagine all the people in the world, our kids, if they have an idea and they don't know E equals MC squared, they can have query properly AI to get it. Now, the downside is disinformation out the wazoo. If we think the web was the information age, social media was the disinformation age, and AI is the disinformation age on steroids. Okay? So that's one problem with AI. And the second problem is every country and every manufacturer in the world is going to have offensive and defensive AI. This will become the biggest weapon of war in the future. So I'm glad I'm not going to be around. But there's some bad side, but in the meantime, there's so much good you can do with it. It's amazing.
Here in front, Chris.
Okay, we should, Mikey,
Yeah.
let's call this one the
Chris,
last one.
Chris, when you say EVs are going to win today and ultimately prevail, do you mean for the low end of the market or across the board? Because I can't imagine it being across the board.
Oh, I think it's.
Is there enough battery manufacturing capacity and material available in the world to replace everything with batteries
I think it is
in
going.
our lifetime anyway?
Well, no, I think it's, Chinese are already, wait a second, Chinese are already at, let's say 25% of the global market. Whatever, you pick the number. Chinese intend to be 80% within the next few years.
Including trucks.
Now, I didn't say trucks, I said E-revs
Okay.
on trucks. I didn't say it on the slide, you're right. I think E-revs are going to take over the truck market.
Okay.
But passenger vehicles, I think it's just, battery costs are going to be way below.
Okay.
And that's where hybrids fall out, is because you've got two engines instead of one. It's as simple
Also,
as that.
I can't resist one more comment because I'm a purchasing guy my entire career, as you know. And I see Steve Gasparovich back here, also from purchasing, maybe a few others in the room. But when you mentioned COVID cars, I love that term. This is what I'll call COVID purchasing. What happened is, before we would award business during my working career to a supplier, I personally wanted to go visit that supplier, look at the facility, talk to the management, and compare with, competitive bidding across the board with several other suppliers,
Yeah.
not just base it on whatever the internet is telling me or whatever the low-cost solution is, and never having set foot in a factory. These buyers are making decisions. We have no clue
Oh, I
Where the
understand.
parts being made, what the management facility, what the facility looks like, what the quality control measures are, et cetera, et
In
cetera.
fact,
It's a disaster.
what I believe is this. I believe when you're making a, of course, we talk about this in the chapter, basically, and I should have said this too in the chapter. I believe when you're making a sourcing decision, not only, and there's a whole lot more to it, but not just you visiting the factory, the SQA guy visiting the factory with the engineer that designed the part. You know, because unfortunately, there's been a tendency for the SQA guys to go down to the checklist. Do you have a PPAP? Do you have a this? Do you have a that? I understand. That's what it's all about. That's why I'm cutting across all these functions, because if they don't work together and if they're disjointed, the company's not going to prosper.
Chris, way back here.
Where is the electrical grid going to come from to support all these EVs? And we even have AI data centers sucking up all kinds of electrical capacity. Where is the electrical capacity? Where is the grid? Where is all that going to come from?
Well,
and economically?
Well, that's a great point. And as you know, and everybody else in this room knows, we've got probably the world's oldest electric grid, except for those countries that don't have one, like, sub-Saharan Africa, but that's a different story. The Chinese have a grid, they're building a grid. In the US, you're correct. And that's one reason we're behind. And the data centers are sucking up power like nobody's business. And we as a country will have to have a policy ultimately to generate that power. Now, I mentioned I was working on a hydrogen engine. We did a market analysis, and the world, I think the Strait of Hormuz has taught us that we are much more dependent on oil. I mean, everybody says, oh, we're just going to have all battery and all the problems are going to go away. No, they don't. We're hugely dependent on oil. But to answer your question on the grid, we haven't addressed solar. The Chinese are. And the other thing, I did a market analysis. If this hydrogen engine, and we've got some other CO2-free fuels that we're looking at, if that were used on generators, the market is huge, and they could power these generators so they could feed the grids. Last thing, the battery swapping that I talk about. Also, when you go to battery swapping, you're going to still need the energy, but you can get that energy back 1.5 hours and at lower rates. So you're right. We don't have the capacity. It's a good thing it's not a good thing, but we didn't prepare to expand. I mean, we had the Green New Deal or whatever the hell, the Inflation Reduction Act, and it took 2 years to install 8 charging stations with the government's help. So that's our government at work, and that's not a political statement. There's only one thing more inefficient than big business, and it's big government. So, okay.
Chris, at the beginning of your presentation, and you showed us all these different chapters, and you mentioned Dennis Pauly and other people are looking at the chapters. Are you asking for additional support or information from people about best practices or any contributions to the development of these chapters?
Well, the chapters are done, number one, but like I said, what we're going to do is we're going to put the chapters out. We're going to put the videos out, and if you think something's missing, or if you think something's wrong, there's going to be a place where you could comment on John McElroy's site, where you can say you forgot to talk about this, and then we're going to read all of those. And other than saying Chris Theodore should be shot, we'll answer them and incorporate them in the book. Okay? All right, guys. Well, it should be out. I hope the first one comes out in August. We've got, like I said, we've got 30 hours on tape. So we'll let you know. Keep watching, and we'll see what you think. Thanks again.
Thank you, Chris. And thank you, everyone. Please have a great summer, be safe, and we'll see you at the October breakfast meeting. Bye-bye.